The next subject we're going to talk about is kind of interesting. It's basically a system that allows you to take down your M4 as small as possible. In 2018, the Air Force is looking for a new survival weapon, specifically for bombers and fighter jet pilots. This configuration needed to fit in an ejection seat, so the package had to be extremely small. Now, previous to this, most of the survival weapons that they had, especially in the early years, were more for survival, small game, utilizing 410 shotgun shells and 22 Hornets, things that are great for food survival, but not necessarily good for defense, right? Or going on the offense in this particular case. So the Air Force have what they call the Air Crew Survival Defense Weapon. And during this project, what they're looking for is, how do we take an M4 and how do we make it as small as possible? And we're gonna break that down specifically from the guy who invented it back in 2016, which was Michael Salvetti. And you'll know that company by Cry Havoc Tactical. Cry Havoc Tactical allows you to do it yourself, so you can take this mechanism and you can put on your own rail and your own barrel, and we'll go into that a little bit. Now, Weapons Tech Engineering does full weapon builds. So they build complete uppers, already done, ready to rock and roll out of the shop, along with complete weapons, both obviously rail, upper, and lower. But first, we're going to go through a little bit of a history before I tell you what my experience has been with this particular system. Back in 1960, the Air Force has had various forms of weaponry that their pilots have always carried either in their bags or in their ejection seats or on them. And this was in the very beginning in the 1960 time frame. They had versions of an M16. I believe the first model was a 601, and then they went to the GAU-5A Alpha. And since then, they've had M6 survival rifles, which are basically a 22 Hornet mixed with a 410. So that particular weapon was great when it came to providing food, right? After that, they went to the M4 by H&R. This was kind of an interesting weapon. It was a 22 Hornet 14-incher bolt action, only held 4 rounds though. So you could see if you were going up against enemy combatants, that would be a big problem. Then you had the AR-5, which was a 3-piece weapon. So you had the barrel, the receiver, and the action all tied in together. Again, we're looking at a weapon that fired a 22 Hornet. Not that they can't be lethal, but I don't think you want to get in an AK-47 fight against somebody while you're running a 22 Hornet. Now enter in the 38, 45s, 9mm, and of course, now in 2018, you've got the GAU-5 Alpha. We're gonna break this down. I think the most impressive thing to me isn't the fact that, okay, you can break it down into a small package. It's that you can do it with an amazing repeatability of 0. I'm sorry, but I'm the kind of guy that if you take an optic off, even though it's got a throw lever and they say, hey, repeatability within this margin, I still got to go out and zero that gun because I lose confidence anytime I take something like that off. And when they sent me two of these versions, and they're like, no, you actually take the rail and the barrel off the upper receiver. And my thought process is, well, okay, that's awesome for compactability, but not for repeatability of 0. And the Air Force standard was 1 MOA. So for those that don't understand what that is, that's 1 minute of angle at 100 yards, which means you're looking at, it had to hold an inch or less at 100 yards. And let me tell you something, I've played around with this and I am impressed. So the Air Force version that they started with was a safe semi and burst. It had a Midwest Industries rail, obviously this integral piece that separates the rail from the actual upper that we've talked about, and I'll show you again. I'm just trying to cover information before I start putting things in my hands. And then it had a set of Magpul MBUS sights on it, and then it was also a 12.5 inch 5.56 barrel. I saw some of the versions where even the grip would break down just a little bit to give them a little bit of room. The original versions that I saw still had a regular buffer tube on it with a regular kind of car 15 style of stock. However, the way I look at this is in regards to compactability is when you take this system with either a law folder or a lower receiver like from Shield Arms and you can collapse that sideways, you have something that's pretty amazing. A couple things that are also important to note is once the Air Force got all the parts, they're the ones that did the builds. Like I said, these builds now, full guns and rails, you'll go see Weapons Tech Engineering to make sure you're good. As you can see, this is a 16-inch barrel gun, okay? And it's really hard when you're doing certain things, if you like to bring a rifle with you, and let's just say you take it out of your car because you're at a hotel or something like that, or you're going back home and you're in and out, and you don't want people to see a large footprint. Well, I'm sorry, but when this thing's in a rifle bag, the bag's pretty big. So let's enter in, you have some form of side folder. Well, it just got smaller, which makes it nice. So we've got a little bit more compactability right here, except you really want to be as small as possible. So to do that, real simple, I'm going to just pull back, flip this side off, down, and this is what you got. So now, when you look at this piece right here being your upper barrel and assembly, and one thing to also note is this is a 2-pin design. And what that's primarily for is if you were in low light or no light situation and you had to put this together, those 2 pins are there to keep you out of trouble, to make sure that they align with the right hole. So that second pin is important as well for that, and the Air Force wanted it. Now when you start to look at this piece right here, okay, and this is what it looks like. One thing that's also important to note if you buy just the pieces yourself and you don't have somebody like Weapon Tech build it for you, these 2 pieces, this piece and the piece that's on the upper receiver, or not the upper receiver, but the rail, they take up a certain amount of real estate. So if you're running a 10.5 barrel and you're trying to run like a 9-inch rail, when you put this mechanism on, it's going to put the rail over the barrel. So you'll have to definitely talk with their reps in regards to which is going to be the best combination for you. Like I said, this happens to be a Shield Arms. You could do this with a law folder as well. And this is your footprint of what's going to go in a really small bag. Okay, and then when you look at this measured with a 16-inch barrel, this is where you're at. Okay, so I know it's really hard to kind of convey this over, you know, over the TV right here, but this is a 16-inch barrel. They make different length barrels. Like for instance, this one right here is a 300 blackout and it's a 10.3. Take the suppressor off. Go back to this for a split second. Pull this off. I mean, this is what you're looking at. This is what you got a bag. And then if you add in the lower portion without that big rifle scope, what you're gonna find is the upper is pretty much the same size as the lower. I mean, this is what you're bagging. Concealability on this is really, really amazing. The accuracy, and that's why I would go with Weapons Tech to do a full build, because the accuracy, I believe, was also the hands-on and what they're doing, barrels that they're using specifically for this, these configurations. So a really small footprint, because now you're talking about walking in with a bag this big than a normal looking rifle bag. You can throw this in a normal backpack. Like I said, primarily this was for the Air Force to be able to break this thing apart to go into their injection seat. For us, we have a lot more flexibility in what we're doing. Some of you may want a longer barrel, pack in somewhere, and then get out from there, you know, and do a hunt or something like that, depending upon what you're using. And some of you guys just may want more concealability. So just something to think about. I'm gonna do my best to take a target, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot it. I'll shoot a group on it with 4 shots, and then what I'm gonna do is pop the barrel out, put the barrel back in, and reshoot it again. And it's as fast as I can possibly do it on video for you to see. But even if you don't trust me, that's fine, because apparently the Air Force didn't have a problem with it, and they bought these systems because they were able to hold an inch or less. So just something to think about. Just to give you kind of a reference, this is that 10-3 300 blackout. This is a Vertex small commuter bag. You can see how much room you have, and then if you want to stow magazines in here, you can. So a lot of flexibility with this. So just one of the setups. I know one of the other ones that I saw was a 6-inch 300 blackout, and when you broke it all down, it fit in a kid's lunchbox. That's how small it was. So again, giving you a little bit smaller footprint. The next thing I'll show you is what the 16-inch fits in. This bag is by X Block. It's a really nice bag, real small. I use a lot of my PCCs for this. You could put that 16-inch barrel in that particular sleeve if you needed to. Since the bag's longer, there's really no need, unless you feel like it, to break this down and side fold it. You could keep it with a normal tube style on there and not even use a folder. Obviously, you can put it in here and put this barrel configuration right next to the upper and lower. I think the biggest thing is just that flexibility for the user to walk into either a hotel or a building or something like that with a small Vertex commuter bag, or something that's really looks like a normal style backpack. I think those that are doing security, this gives you a little bit of flexibility where sometimes you want to be able to have a certain style of gun in case things get really bad. It only takes a few seconds to throw that barrel into that lower receiver and directly into the upper. So to clamp it only takes a matter of seconds if for some reason you need more firepower. So from a security point of view, from a concealability point of view, both for civilian, law enforcement, and military, I think it gives you a great application and a good option. This is my first group. That's 4 shots, 100 yards prior to pulling the barrel apart. So I didn't make any adjustments. That I would say is probably a flyer right there. This is another 4 rounds right here on top of what I've already shot. That is amazing. To be able to pull that barrel out and hold those kind of tolerances, that's truly amazing. And that's with subsonic federal ammo. They're bowtail hollow point. So if I was shooting like 110 grain supersonic nozzler, I know my accuracy out of those rounds are a lot tighter than what that is. Just as a reference, this is on Kyle Ben's targets, this is a 1-inch cube. So you're you're under with that flyer gone. You're right at 1 MOA. That's really impressive.